A wicked billionaire throws the black maid into a piranha-infested pool at his party. Guests film her death for entertainment. The world had witnessed cruelty before, but never live-streamed with champagne in hand. A woman pushed into churning water filled with razor-toothed predators, while a mansion full of the wealthy elite laughed and recorded her final moments. No one expected what happened next. The video went viral. Her name became a rallying cry, and millions watched as the tables turned in the most brutal way imaginable. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're watching from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Now, let's continue. Celeste's body hit the water with a sound like a door slamming shut on her old life. The cold shock stole her breath. The weight of her soaked uniform pulled her down, dragging her deeper into the churning blue. She opened her eyes underwater and saw them, at least 30 piranhas, their silver bodies flashing through the artificial light, their eyes black and flat, their mouths opening and closing, revealing triangular teeth designed to strip flesh from bone in seconds. Above the surface, Isaac's voice rang out, muffled but triumphant. "Someone time how long she lasts. I'm betting under a minute." Laughter, screams, the sound of phones recording, the wealthy elite of the city watching a woman drown, entertained by her terror, placing bets on her death like it was a sporting event. The piranhas circled closer. Celeste's lungs burned, demanding air she couldn't give them. Her muscles screamed. Every instinct told her to thrash, to fight, to swim for the surface, but she forced herself to go absolutely still, letting her body sink slowly toward the bottom of the pool. She'd written a 30-page thesis on piranha feeding behavior. She knew they attacked erratic movement. She knew they were attracted to splashing, to blood, to panic. So she gave them none of it. The piranhas circled, curious but cautious, their razor teeth glinting in the underwater lights. On the pool deck above, guests were shouting. Some were cheering. Isaac was leaning over the edge, face twisted with anticipation, waiting for the water to turn red. But what they didn't know was that Celeste had been preparing for this moment her entire life. 30 minutes earlier, the Warren estate had been a picture of obscene wealth and casual cruelty. The sun blazed over the property like a spotlight on sin, casting golden light across manicured lawns that stretched for acres, past marble fountains imported from Italy, through gardens where roses cost more to maintain than most people's annual salaries. The mansion itself rose 3 stories, all glass and white stone, every angle designed to remind visitors that Isaac Warren owned more than buildings. He owned power itself. The party was in full swing by 7 p.m. 200 guests milled about the terraces and pool deck, sipping champagne that cost $1,000 per bottle, nibbling on caviar served by staff who'd been instructed to remain invisible. A string quartet played near the rose garden. Waiters in crisp white jackets glided through the crowd like ghosts, their trays perpetually full, their faces perpetually neutral. At the center of it all, like a beating heart of cruelty, sat the pool. Olympic-sized, crystal-clear water. But it wasn't the size that made guests stop and stare. It was the glass walls installed along 3 sides, thick transparent panels that turned the pool into an aquarium. And inside that aquarium, visible to everyone, dozens of piranhas swam in restless patterns. "My conversation piece," Isaac would tell guests, that sharp smile spreading across his tanned face. "Red-bellied piranhas. Pygocentrus natereri, if you want to be technical. It cost me $200,000 to import them legally, plus another $1 million for the filtration system and the glass installation. But you can't put a price on uniqueness, can you?" What he didn't mention was how many health and safety violations he'd bribed officials to overlook. How many concerns from the party planners he'd dismissed. How many times his staff had begged him to drain the pool before someone got hurt. Isaac Warren didn't care about safety. He cared about power, about showing everyone who came to his estate that he could own anything, even danger, even death. He stood now near the pool's edge, wearing a white linen suit that probably cost more than Celeste made in 6 months. At 47, Isaac looked like wealth personified, perfectly tanned skin, silver at his temples, an expensive watch catching the light with every gesture. He owned half the city's waterfront properties, 3 luxury hotel chains, and enough politicians to make laws bend around him like water around stone. He also had a reputation for cruelty that everyone whispered about, but no one challenged. Celeste Moore moved through the crowd with practiced invisibility, her black uniform perfectly pressed, her hair pulled back tight, her face a careful mask of professional neutrality. At 34, she'd learned how to disappear in plain sight, how to serve the wealthy without provoking their attention, how to survive in spaces that made it clear she didn't belong. She carried a tray of wine glasses, weaving between clusters of guests who didn't bother to lower their voices when she approached. They discussed stock portfolios and vacation homes, complained about taxes and lazy staff, laughed about deals that would put hundreds of people out of work. Celeste had been working for Isaac Warren for 6 months. 6 months of insults masked as jokes. 6 months of casual racism delivered with smiles. 6 months of watching him treat people like disposable objects. But she'd endured it because she needed to be here, because Isaac Warren had destroyed something she loved, and she needed proof before she could make him pay. She'd been a marine biology student once, years ago. A scholarship kid at the state university, fascinated by ocean ecosystems, dreaming of a career protecting endangered species and studying predator behavior. She'd been writing her thesis on aggressive fish species when her mother was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. The medical bills had buried them. Celeste had dropped out to work 3 jobs, watching her dreams dissolve like salt in water. Her mother died anyway. After the funeral, Celeste had spent months adrift, working wherever she could, trying to figure out what came next. Then she'd seen the news report about the marine sanctuary, the protected reef habitat off the coast, home to dozens of endangered species. The reef that was dying, poisoned by toxic waste that kept appearing despite environmental protections. The waste that traced back to Warren Industries. Isaac had been dumping industrial chemicals for years, bribing inspectors, falsifying reports, killing thousands of fish and coral to save money on proper disposal. Celeste had spent weeks investigating, gathering what evidence she could from public records. Then she'd done something crazy. She'd applied for a job as his maid. She needed access to his private files. She needed proof that would hold up in court. She needed justice for the ocean that had been her first love, the dream he'd helped destroy. 2 weeks ago, she'd finally found it. Late at night, while Isaac entertained guests on the yacht, Celeste had broken into his home office and photographed everything, dumping schedules, payment records to corrupt officials, emails discussing how to avoid detection. She'd sent it all to 3 environmental organizations, anonymously, waiting for the right moment to go public. Isaac had found out yesterday. She didn't know how. Maybe he had cameras she'd missed. Maybe someone had talked. But that morning, he'd called her into his office and smiled that sharp smile and said, "I know what you did, Celeste, and tonight, you're going to learn what happens to people who forget their place." Now, as she moved through the party with her tray of wine, Celeste's hands were steady, but her heart raced. She knew something was coming. She just didn't know what. The answer came at 7:43 p.m. She was serving drinks near the pool when one of Isaac's guests, a real estate developer in a tailored suit, gestured wildly while telling a story. His hand caught Celeste's tray, sending it tilting. A glass of red wine toppled, splashing across the white dress of the woman beside him. The woman shrieked. The conversation died. Everyone turned to stare. "Oh my God," the woman gasped, looking down at the spreading stain. "This is vintage Chanel." "I'm so sorry," Celeste said immediately, her voice level despite her pounding heart. "Let me get something to clean that. I'll pay for the dry cleaning. You'll pay?" The woman laughed, shrill and cruel. "Do you have any idea how much this cost? You probably won't make that much in a year." Isaac appeared beside them, as if he'd been waiting for this exact moment. His smile was wide and terrible. "What seems to be the problem?" "Your clumsy maid just ruined my dress," the woman said. Isaac looked at Celeste, and she saw it in his eyes. This was it. This was his moment. The accident he'd been planning, the excuse he'd been waiting for. "I see," he said softly. Then his voice rose, carrying across the pool deck. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?" The party quieted. 200 faces turned toward them. Celeste's stomach dropped. "It seems," Isaac announced, "that we have a problem with respect in this house, with understanding one's place." He grabbed Celeste's arm, his fingers digging into her flesh. "This woman has been stealing from me, spying on me, breaking into my private files." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Celeste opened her mouth to defend herself, but Isaac's grip tightened, cutting off her words. "And now," he continued, dragging her toward the pool, "she's assaulted one of my guests, so I think it's time for a lesson, a demonstration of what happens when you forget who you work for." They were at the pool's edge now. The glass walls revealed the piranhas swimming below, their silver bodies moving in hypnotic patterns. The guests formed a half-circle, phones already out, already recording. Some looked uncomfortable, most looked entertained. This was what they'd come for, Celeste realized. Not just a party, a show. Isaac's reputation for cruelty wasn't a secret, it was a feature. "People like you," Isaac said quietly, his voice dropping so only Celeste could hear. "I think you can expose people like me. Think you can play a hero. But you're not a hero, Celeste. You're just helping. And help is replaceable." The pool's filter hummed softly. The piranhas sensed movement, gathering near the edge where shadows fell. Celeste looked down at them, at the water that would either kill her or save her, and something inside her went very calm. She'd studied these fish. She knew their behavior, their feeding patterns, their triggers. She'd spent 6 months in this house, learning its layout, noting the equipment room where the pool controls were housed, and memorizing escape routes. And she'd survived worse than Isaac Warren. She'd survived losing everything. She'd survived watching her mother die. She'd survived being told repeatedly that she didn't matter, that she should accept her place, that fighting back was futile. She was done surviving. It was time to fight. "Any last words?" Isaac asked, loud enough for the crowd again. Celeste turned her head, looked him directly in the eye, and said, "You're going to regret this." Isaac laughed. The guests laughed. The night air filled with their certainty that this was entertainment, that nothing they witnessed would ever touch their comfortable lives. Then Isaac pushed, and Celeste fell into the water filled with teeth and death and the cold clarity of pure survival instinct. The cold wrapped around Celeste like a fist, squeezing the air from her lungs. Her body wanted to thrash, to fight, to kick toward the surface and gasp for oxygen. Every survival instinct screamed at her to move, to escape, to live. But Celeste forced herself to remain motionless. She hung suspended in the blue silence, her uniform billowing around her like dark wings, her hair floating free from its tight bun. The piranhas circled at a distance of maybe 6 feet, their silver scales catching the underwater lights, their flat black eyes watching her with the cold calculation of pure predators. 30 of them, maybe more, each one roughly the size of her hand, compact bodies packed with muscle and teeth. Red-bellied piranhas, Pygocentris naturari. She'd studied them for an entire semester, fascinated by the gap between their reputation and their reality. The reality was that piranhas were cautious hunters. They attacked injured prey, thrashing prey, bleeding prey. They responded to panic. But a still target, a calm target, confused them, made them hesitate. Celeste counted her heartbeats, measuring the oxygen left in her lungs. She'd been a competitive swimmer in high school, before college, before her world had fallen apart. She could hold her breath for 2 minutes if she stayed calm, maybe 2.5 if she was lucky. She had maybe 45 seconds before her body would force her to surface. Above the water, muffled by the barrier between their worlds, she could hear screaming, shouting, Isaac's laughter cutting through it all like a knife. "Look at her down there, frozen like a deer in headlights." More laughter, the sound of phones recording. Someone was crying, high-pitched and theatrical. Another person was placing bets on how long she'd last. Celeste tuned them out. She needed to focus, needed to remember everything she'd learned. The memories came flooding back, sharp and painful as the cold water. 6 years ago, she'd been standing in a university lecture hall, 28 years old, and finally pursuing the dream she'd had since childhood. The scholarship had been a miracle, a second chance after years of working dead-end jobs to help her mother with bills. Marine biology, the study of ocean ecosystems, predator behavior, the delicate balance that kept underwater worlds alive. Professor Chen had been lecturing on aggressive fish species. "Piranhas have a reputation," he'd said, clicking through slides showing their razor teeth, their powerful jaws. Hollywood made them into monsters. But the truth is more nuanced. They're scavengers as much as hunters. They respond to blood in the water, yes, to splashing and distress signals, but a healthy, calm animal, they'll often leave it alone. Celeste had raised her hand. What about their feeding frenzies, the stories of them stripping cattle to bone in minutes? Professor Chen smiled. Those are real, but rare. Usually triggered by extreme hunger and the presence of already wounded prey. A single, healthy human, moving calmly through piranha-inhabited water, would likely emerge unharmed. It's the panic that kills you, the thrashing that signals vulnerability. She'd written it all down, had spent weeks in the lab studying piranha behavior patterns, watching how they responded to different stimuli. Her thesis topic had practically chosen itself: predatory response patterns in Pygocentris naturari, distinguishing myth from measurable behavior. She'd been so excited, so certain that this was the path her life would take: research, conservation, making a difference. Then her mother called with the diagnosis: Stage 4 cancer, 6 months, maybe less. No insurance that would cover the treatments that might buy her more time. Celeste had withdrawn from school 2 weeks later. She'd taken 3 jobs, working 18-hour days, watching her savings and her scholarship and her dreams dissolve like salt in seawater. She'd held her mother's hand through every treatment, every setback, every moment of hope that turned to ash. Her mother had died anyway, and Celeste had been left with nothing but debt and the crushing weight of a future that would never arrive. The memory sharpened her focus. brought her back to the present, to the water, to the teeth circling closer. She'd survived losing everything once. She'd survive this. The piranhas were growing bolder. One broke from the circling pattern, darting forward before retreating. Testing. Curious. Her stillness was confusing them, but it wouldn't last forever. Eventually, curiosity would overcome caution. Celeste's lungs were beginning to burn. She needed air. I needed to move, but surfacing now would trigger their attack response. The splashing, the rapid movement toward the surface, would signal prey behavior. She had to be smart, had to use what she knew. Her eyes swept the pool, looking for options. The glass walls offered no escape, too high to climb from inside the water. The pool deck was at least 4 feet above the waterline, designed that way deliberately to make the piranhas visible to guests. But there, along the left wall near the shallow end, she spotted it, the filtration grate. A 2-foot square opening covered by a metal screen where the pool's circulation system drew water for filtering and chlorination. She'd seen the equipment room during her first week working here. Isaac had given her a tour of the estate, showing off his toys like a child with new presents. "This pool has a state-of-the-art system," he'd bragged. "Can create currents, waves, even a whirlpool effect if I want. It costs $3 million to install, but it's worth it for the reactions I get." The control panel had been in a room just off the pool deck. Electronic controls, emergency shutoffs, current direction switches. If she could reach that grate, if she could pull herself up to the edge near the equipment room, if she could get inside and access those controls. A plan began forming in her mind, desperate and dangerous but possible. First, she needed to breathe. Celeste began moving slowly, deliberately. No splashing, no rapid kicks. She used her arms to pull herself through the water in long, smooth strokes, the kind she'd learned in competitive swimming, efficient, controlled, minimizing disturbance. The piranhas followed but didn't attack. They stayed in their loose circle, watching, waiting for her to panic. She angled toward the surface, still moving with agonizing slowness. Her vision was starting to tunnel at the edges, her body screaming for oxygen. Just a few more feet, just a little longer. Her head broke the surface. She gasped, dragging air into her burning lungs, trying to keep the intake quiet and controlled, even though every cell in her body wanted to gasp and choke and scream. "She's alive!" someone shouted from the pool deck. "Not for long," Isaac's voice, gleeful and cruel. "Watch this." Something splashed into the water near her head. Then another. Isaac was throwing ice cubes from someone's drink, creating disturbances in the water, trying to agitate the piranhas. "Come on, you useless fish," he yelled. "Earn your keep!" Celeste dove back under, the ice cubes sinking past her. The piranhas scattered briefly at the new disturbances, then regrouped. They were getting more agitated now, more aggressive. One darted so close she could see the individual teeth in its open mouth. She pulled herself lower in the water, heading for the filtration grate. It was maybe 20 feet away. She could make it. She had to make it. Her fingers brushed the metal screen covering the grate. Behind it, she could feel the gentle suction of water being drawn into the filtration system. Not strong enough to trap her, but enough to notice. The grate was secured with 4 screws at the corners. No way to remove it without tools. But if she could just hold on, use it as an anchor point, maybe she could wait out the piranha's aggression, letting them lose interest. Above her, the water churned as more objects hit the surface. Isaac was throwing everything he could grab, trying to create a feeding frenzy. Champagne bottles, plates, someone's shoe. The piranhas were going crazy now, darting in all directions, snapping at the falling objects. One came within inches of Celeste's leg. She pressed herself against the wall, trying to make herself as small as possible, when she felt it. A sharp, hot pain on her forearm. She looked down and saw the piranha attached to her skin, its teeth sunk into her flesh. It thrashed once, twice, then released, taking a small chunk of her with it. Blood bloomed in the water like a crimson flower, spreading, dissipating, carrying its message through every molecule of the pool. Prey. Wounded prey. Vulnerable prey. The other piranhas stopped circling, stopped darting randomly. They all turned, as if controlled by a single mind, and faced Celeste. Their mouths opened. The piranhas swam toward her in a silver wave, jaws opening, closing, opening again. 30 sets of teeth converging on the blood spreading from her arm. Celeste had maybe 3 seconds before they reached her. Her hand flew to her foot, fingers fumbling with the lace of her black work shoe. The water made everything slippery, clumsy. Her lungs were screaming again, her arm throbbing where the piranha had bitten her. 1 second, 2 seconds. The shoe came free. Celeste twisted her body and hurled the shoe as hard as she could toward the far end of the pool, toward the deep end where the glass walls were thickest. The shoe tumbled through the water, creating turbulence, movement, the exact kind of erratic motion that triggered piranha-feeding instincts. The effect was immediate. The school of piranhas veered as one, abandoning their approach toward Celeste and surging after the shoe. They hit it in a frenzy, teeth flashing, bodies writhing against each other as they tore into the leather and fabric. Celeste didn't wait to watch. She kicked hard toward the shallow end, ignoring the pain in her arm, ignoring the burn in her lungs, ignoring everything except the need to move now while the piranhas were distracted. Her strokes were smooth and powerful, muscle memory from years of competitive swimming taking over. 10 feet, 15, 20. The shallow end was close now, where the water depth dropped to 4 feet, where the pool deck was lowest, where she might actually be able to pull herself out. Behind her, the piranhas finished with the shoe and turned, searching for the source of the blood that still flavored the water. Celeste's head broke the surface. She gasped for air, her hands reaching for the pool's edge, fingers scraping against the smooth tile. So close. Just a few more inches, and she could grip the coping, haul herself up, get away from the teeth and the water and the death Isaac had planned for her. Her fingers found purchase on the edge. Then a shadow fell across her, blocking out the lights. Isaac Warren stood above her, his white linen suit splattered with champagne someone had spilled in the chaos. His face was twisted with rage, all pretense of civility stripped away. This was the real Isaac, the monster under the expensive clothes and practiced smile. "No," he said simply. His shoe came down on her fingers. The pain was instant and blinding. Celeste screamed, bubbles erupting from her mouth as her grip failed, and she slipped back into the water. Above her, Isaac ground his heel down harder, crushing her knuckles against the tile edge. "You don't get to survive this," he hissed, his voice low enough that only she could hear over the shouting of the guests. "You think you're clever? You think you can steal from me, spy on me, ruin me, and then just swim away? No, you die here. Tonight. In front of everyone. And it's going to look like a tragic accident." He lifted his foot and kicked her hand away, sending her tumbling backward into the water. Celeste plunged under again, disoriented, her injured hand useless, blood streaming from her torn knuckles now in addition to her arm. The piranhas were circling closer, drawn by the fresh blood. Their cautious behavior completely gone now. On the pool deck, the guests were in chaos. "Someone call the police," a woman's voice shrieked. "This is murder. He's killing her. Get it on camera. Get everything." But others were laughing, cheering, treating it like entertainment. A man in an expensive watch was shouting encouragement to Isaac. A group near the bar had started placing new bets, and everywhere, phones were recording, capturing every moment of Celeste's fight for survival. One woman, younger than the rest, maybe in her 30s, pulled out her phone and started to dial. "I'm calling 911, she announced, her voice shaking. "This has gone too far." Two of Isaac's security guards appeared beside her instantly. One plucked the phone from her hand, while the other smiled politely and said, "I'm afraid Mr. Warren doesn't want to be disturbed during his party. We'll need you to leave." "But he's killing her." "That's Mr. Warren's employee, his property, his pool, his business." The guard's smile never wavered. "Now, you can leave quietly, or we can escort you out. Your choice." The woman looked around at the other guests, searching for support, for someone else who would stand up and say this was wrong. But most avoided her eyes. They'd seen what happened to people who crossed Isaac Warren. Their fortunes, their reputations, their careers could disappear with a phone call from him. The woman left, casting one last horrified look at the pool where Celeste was struggling to stay alive. Isaac grabbed a champagne bottle from a passing server's tray. He threw it into the pool, the glass shattering as it hit the water, sending shards and bubbles and fresh disturbance rippling through the blue. "Come on!" he screamed at the piranhas. "What do I feed you for? Kill her!" He grabbed more objects. Plates, glasses, someone's purse. All of it went into the pool, creating chaos, agitating the fish, making the water churn with confusion and aggression. Celeste dodged a falling plate, the ceramic passing inches from her head. Another piranha darted in, nipping at her leg. She kicked it away, but two more took its place. They were swarming now, the frenzy Isaac had been trying to create finally taking hold. She needed to get out. I needed to reach the equipment room, needed to change the current, create a distraction, something, anything that would give her a chance. But Isaac stood at the edge, blocking her escape, throwing objects. Laughing like this was the best night of his life. And in that moment, watching him, Celeste remembered exactly why she'd taken this job, why she'd endured 6 months of his cruelty. Why did she risk everything to expose him? It had started 9 months ago, when she'd seen the news report about the reef. The Sanctuary Reef, 50 miles off the coast, is a protected marine habitat home to endangered sea turtles, rare coral formations, and dozens of fish species found nowhere else on Earth. The reef, where Celeste had done her undergraduate research, where she'd fallen in love with the ocean, where she'd dreamed of spending her career. The reef that was dying. "Environmental officials are baffled," the news anchor had said, images of dead fish and bleached coral filling the screen. Toxic chemicals have been found in the water, but the source remains unknown. The damage may be irreversible. Celeste had stared at that screen, tears streaming down her face, watching everything she'd loved being destroyed. She'd spent weeks investigating, following paper trails, connecting dots that officials had either missed or been paid to ignore. All roads led to Warren Industries. Isaac's real estate development company did more than build luxury hotels and condos. They also operated a chemical processing facility that serviced his construction projects. And that facility had been illegally dumping industrial waste for years, saving millions in proper disposal costs by simply releasing toxins into the ocean at night. The waste was traveling on ocean currents straight to the Sanctuary Reef. Celeste had gathered what public evidence she could, but it wasn't enough. She needed internal documents, emails, and disposal records. She needed proof that would hold up in court, that couldn't be dismissed or buried by Isaac's lawyers. So she'd done something crazy. She'd applied for a job as his maid. The irony wasn't lost on her. The scholarship student who'd studied marine biology, who'd written papers on predator behavior and ecosystem conservation, scrubbing toilets and serving drinks for the man who was killing the ocean she loved. But it worked. She'd gained access to his home office. She'd photographed everything, dumping schedules showing late-night disposal runs, payment records to corrupt inspectors, emails discussing how to avoid environmental regulations, internal memos calculating that legal fines were cheaper than proper disposal. She'd sent it all to 3 environmental organizations 2 weeks ago, anonymously, with instructions to coordinate their public release for maximum impact. But Isaac had found out. She still didn't know how, whether he had cameras she'd missed or whether someone had talked. But yesterday morning, he'd called her into his office with that sharp smile and said, "I know what you did, Celeste, and you're going to pay for it." She'd thought he meant firing her, maybe having her arrested on false charges again. She hadn't expected this. Murder, live-streamed for entertainment, disguised as a tragic accident at a party. A piranha bit into her calf. Celeste screamed, the sound emerging as bubbles, and kicked wildly. Another one got her shoulder, then another at her side. They were everywhere now, the frenzy fully triggered, their teeth finding her again and again. Small bites, quick strikes, but there were so many of them. Celeste's vision was starting to blur. Blood clouded the water around her. Her movements were growing sluggish from blood loss, from oxygen deprivation, from exhaustion. She was going to die here. Isaac was going to win. No. The word formed in her mind with perfect clarity. She hadn't survived losing everything, hadn't endured 6 months of abuse, hadn't fought this hard just to die in Isaac Warren's trophy pool. She surfaced one more time, gasping, her eyes locking onto Isaac's face. He was smiling, thinking he'd won, thinking her death was seconds away. Celeste lunged for the edge with her good hand, her fingers finding purchase on the coping. Isaac moved to kick her away again, stepping close to the edge, his shoe raised. But this time, Celeste was ready. Her other hand, damaged and bleeding and barely functional, shot up and grabbed his ankle. She pulled with every ounce of strength she had left, yanked with all the rage and desperation and refusal to die that burned in her chest. Isaac's eyes went wide. His arms windmilled, trying to keep his balance. His mouth opened in surprise. Then he fell. The splash was enormous, sending water cascading over the pool deck. Guests screamed. Phones captured everything. And Isaac Warren, billionaire real estate mogul, sadistic party host, murderer of oceans and people alike, plunged into his own piranha-infested pool. Isaac's arms windmilled frantically as he teetered on the edge, half his body already over the water. For one frozen moment, he hung there, suspended between the pool deck and the death trap he'd created. His eyes locked with Celeste's, wide with sudden understanding, with fear he'd never felt before. Then his hand shot out and grabbed the pool coping with desperate strength. His expensive shoes scrabbled against the tile, finding purchase. He hauled himself backward, away from the edge, collapsing onto the deck with his white linen suit soaked and his chest heaving. "You bitch!" he gasped, staring at Celeste with pure hatred. "You're dead. You're so dead." But while Isaac was catching his breath, while the guests were screaming and recording and trying to process what they'd just witnessed, Celeste was moving. She pulled herself up on the opposite side of the pool, away from Isaac, using the last reserves of her strength. Her arms shook. Her legs barely held her weight. Blood ran from her arm, her hand, her leg, her shoulder, leaving red trails across the white tile. But she was out of the water, out of reach of the piranhas that were still churning below, confused by all the disturbances, searching for prey. "Stop her!" Isaac screamed, pointing at Celeste as she staggered to her feet. "Security! Stop her now!" Two security guards in black suits appeared from the crowd of guests, moving toward Celeste with professional efficiency. They were both large men, trained, confident they could handle one injured woman. They didn't know Celeste had been running from things her entire life. Poverty, debt collectors, grief. She knew how to run even when her body was broken. She took off across the pool deck, her bare feet slapping against tile, her one remaining shoe abandoned somewhere in the churning water behind her. The guards followed, their polished dress shoes clicking in pursuit. "Get her!" Isaac was on his feet now, dripping wet, his carefully styled hair plastered to his skull. "Don't let her leave this property." But Celeste wasn't running toward the exit. She was running parallel to the pool, toward the small structure built into the landscaping near the shallow end. The pool equipment room. The same room Isaac had shown her during that first tour, bragging about his $3 million filtration and current system. Her hand closed on the door handle. Locked. Of course it was locked. The guards were 20 feet away. 15. Celeste slammed her shoulder into the door. Pain exploded through her injured body, but the door was solid wood, reinforced. It didn't budge. 10 feet. She looked around desperately, her vision swimming, and spotted a decorative rock lining one of the garden beds. She grabbed it, hefted its weight, and smashed it against the door handle. Once. Twice. The metal bent. The guards were almost on her. Third time. The handle broke, the lock mechanism shattering. Celeste threw herself through the door just as the first guard reached for her. She slammed it shut behind her and threw her weight against it, her feet sliding on the concrete floor as the guards hit the other side. There had to be something to block it with. Her eyes adjusted to the dim interior, lit only by the glow of electronic control panels and the light filtering through a small window. Metal shelving units lined one wall, filled with pool chemicals, cleaning supplies, replacement parts. The guards hit the door again. Harder. It flew open 6 inches before Celeste shoved it closed. She grabbed the nearest shelving unit and pulled. It toppled forward with a crash, spilling bottles of chlorine and pH balancers across the floor. She dragged it in front of the door just as the guards hit it again. The shelving unit wedged against the door, holding it closed. Not for long, but maybe long enough. Celeste turned to face the control panel that covered the far wall. A massive electronic display showing water temperature, pH levels, filtration status, and most importantly, the current control system. "Open this door!" The guard's voice came through the wood. "Open it now or we're authorized to use force." Celeste ignored them. Her fingers flew across the touchscreen display, navigating through menus she'd only glimpsed once before. Pool currents, direction controls, flow rates. Outside, she could hear Isaac screaming, "Break it down! I don't care how! Get in there!" The guards hit the door again. The shelving unit shifted an inch. Celeste's bloody fingers left smears on the screen as she pulled up the current system controls. 2 main options appeared: drain and reverse flow. Drain would empty the pool through the filtration system into the estate's water recycling tanks. Emergency function in case of contamination. Time to complete, 20 minutes. 20 minutes she didn't have. 20 minutes during which Isaac would break through, his guards would drag her out, and she'd disappear like all the other people who'd crossed him. But reverse flow, she tapped it, bringing up the specifications. The pool's current system could create artificial waves for swim training. It could generate resistance currents for exercise, and at maximum power, it could create a whirlpool effect strong enough to simulate riptide conditions. "Warning," the screen read. "Maximum reverse flow is not recommended with pool occupants. Risk of drowning or injury." Celeste's finger hovered over the activation button. The door shuddered again. The shelving unit scraped backward another inch. The guards were making progress, and outside, beyond the equipment room, she could hear Isaac rallying his guests. "She's trying to destroy my property. She's criminally trespassing. When we get her out, I want everyone to testify that she attacked me, that this was all self-defense." The guests murmured agreement. Of course they did. They'd tell whatever story Isaac wanted. They always did. Celeste looked at the screen, at the warning, at the choice before her. And she remembered Sarah. Sarah Chen had been her roommate in college, before everything fell apart. Celeste's best friend, the person who'd convinced her to pursue marine biology when she'd been too scared to dream that big. They'd gone to the beach together during spring break their sophomore year. Just the two of them, celebrating midterms being over, swimming in the ocean they both loved. The riptide had caught Sarah 30 feet from shore. Celeste had been further up the beach, hadn't seen it happen. By the time she realized Sarah was in trouble, her friend was already being pulled out to sea, thrashing, panicking, fighting the current in exactly the wrong way. "Swim parallel to shore," Celeste screamed, running into the water. "Don't fight it. Swim parallel." But Sarah hadn't heard, or hadn't understood, or had been too terrified to think. She'd kept swimming straight toward shore, exhausting herself, fighting the current, until she went under and didn't come back up. The Coast Guard had found her body 2 days later. Celeste had spent the next year studying riptides obsessively, how they formed, how they behaved, how to survive them. She'd written papers on water currents, on the physics of how water moved when it was forced to flow in unnatural directions. She'd made herself an expert in the thing that had killed her best friend, as if knowledge could somehow make up for the loss. She'd learned that water, when forced to reverse its natural flow, became violent and unpredictable. It became a weapon. The door shuddered again. The wood cracked. The guards were nearly through. Celeste pressed the activation button. Then she grabbed the emergency release handle on the window, the one installed for fire safety, and yanked it open. Fresh air rushed in. Behind her, the control panel began to hum as the system engaged. "Flow reversal initiating," the electronic voice announced. "Building to maximum capacity. Estimated time to full power. 30 seconds. Celeste climbed through the window, dropping into the garden bed outside. Her legs nearly buckled when she hit the ground, but she forced herself to stay upright, to move, to get to where she could see the pool. The water was already beginning to churn. Isaac stood at the edge, his back to the water, directing his security team. "Forget the door. Go around. Get her from the outside." He didn't notice the change in the water behind him. Didn't feel the shift in the air as thousands of gallons began moving in the wrong direction. The piranhas noticed. They were spinning in confused circles, caught in the building current, unable to fight against the flow. "Flow reversal at 50% capacity," the electronic voice announced from inside the equipment room, audible through the broken door. "Caution! Whirlpool formation detected." Isaac turned then, finally sensing something wrong. He looked at the pool and his face went pale. The water was spinning now, forming a visible depression in the center, a vortex pulling everything toward it. The piranhas were caught in the current, silver bodies flashing as they tumbled helplessly through the artificial maelstrom. "What the hell did you do?" Isaac screamed, spinning to search for Celeste. She stood on the far side of the pool, dripping blood and water, her uniform torn and her body covered in bite marks. But she was standing, alive, unbroken. "I learned from the ocean," she said, her voice carrying across the churning water. "It's stronger than you, stronger than your money, stronger than your cruelty." "Shut it off!" Isaac lunged toward the equipment room, but the door was still blocked by the shelving unit, the guards trying to shove it aside from the inside. "Flow reversal at 75% capacity," the electronic voice announced. "Warning, maximum whirlpool effect approaching." The water was a spinning nightmare now, waves crashing over the edges, soaking the pool deck. Several guests screamed and backed away. Others kept filming, phones held high, capturing every moment. Isaac reached the equipment room door and started pulling at the debris with his bare hands. "Turn it off! Someone turn it off!" But the guards couldn't get out, and Isaac couldn't get in, and the water kept spinning faster. "Flow reversal at 100% capacity. Whirlpool formation is complete." The pool was a washing machine, water churning with such violence that it looked like it was boiling. The piranhas were completely helpless now, thrown around like toys, unable to swim or hunt or do anything except tumble through the current. Isaac abandoned the equipment room door and ran toward the main house, toward the circuit breaker that could shut down the entire pool system. He never made it. His dress shoe hit a patch of water that had sloshed onto the deck. His foot slipped. His arms windmilled again, exactly like before, except this time there was nothing to grab. Isaac Warren fell backward into his own piranha pool, into water churning with enough force to drown a man in seconds, into the death trap he'd built, into the justice he'd spent a lifetime avoiding. The splash was enormous. The screaming was louder. And Celeste Moore, standing in her torn uniform with blood running down her arms, watched the man who'd tried to kill her disappear beneath the violent surface of his own cruelty. Isaac surfaced with a gasp that turned into a scream. The whirlpool had him, pulling him in a wide spiral toward the center of the pool where the current was strongest, where the water churned like it was trying to swallow the world. He kicked frantically, arms flailing, trying to swim against the flow. But the current was too powerful, too relentless. It dragged him around the perimeter of the pool like a toy caught in a drain, spinning him faster with each rotation. And everywhere, tumbling through the violent water with him, were the piranhas. "Help!" Isaac's scream cut through the party, silencing the music, the chatter, everything. "Someone help me!" The guests who'd been laughing minutes ago rushed to the pool edge in genuine horror. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was real. This was a man drowning in front of them, in his own pool, at his own party. "Get him out!" someone shouted. "Do something!" The security guards appeared at the edge, no longer chasing Celeste, their attention completely focused on their employer thrashing in the water. One grabbed a pool float from a nearby lounge chair and threw it toward Isaac. The float hit the water and was immediately sucked into the whirlpool, spinning away before Isaac could reach it. Another guard tried throwing a life preserver. It met the same fate, caught in the current, useless. "The current's too strong," one of the guards yelled. "We can't get anything for him." Isaac was being pulled deeper into the center now, his head going under, coming back up, going under again. The white linen suit that had cost thousands of dollars was plastered to his body, weighing him down. His perfectly styled hair was a mess across his face. His tan skin was pale with terror. The equipment room door finally burst open, the guards having shoved aside the fallen shelving unit. But instead of Celeste, they found an empty room with an open window. "She's gone!" one of them shouted. "Who cares?" someone screamed from the pool deck. "Save him!" But Celeste wasn't gone. She emerged from around the corner of the equipment building, walking slowly toward the pool edge. Her torn uniform dripped water and blood. Her bare feet left red prints on the white tile. Her face was a mask of calm that was somehow more terrifying than rage would have been. The crowd parted for her. No one tried to stop her. No one even spoke to her. They just watched as she approached the edge of the pool where Isaac was drowning. Isaac saw her. Through the churning water, through his panic, through everything, he saw her standing there. Safe, dry, alive. He reached out toward her, his hand breaking the surface for just a moment before the current pulled him under again. When he surfaced, he was closer to the center, spinning faster. "Celeste!" His voice was raw, breaking. "Help me! Please!" She stood at the edge, watching him spin. Silent. "I'm sorry!" Isaac screamed, water filling his mouth, choking him. "I'm sorry for what I did. I'll make it right. I'll give you anything." The guests were shouting now too. At her, at each other, at the universe for putting them in this impossible situation. "You have to save him. Don't just stand there. This is murder. You're killing him." A woman in diamonds grabbed Celeste's arm. "Please, you have to stop this. Whatever he did to you, this isn't the answer. You'll go to prison for this." Celeste looked at the woman's hand on her arm, then up at her face. "He pushed me into that pool to die. You all watched. Some of you filmed it. Some of you laughed." The woman released her arm and stepped back, shame flickering across her face. Isaac went under again. This time he stayed down longer. 5 seconds. 10. 15. When he surfaced, he was gasping, choking, barely able to keep his head above water. Then one of the piranhas, tumbling helplessly through the current, crashed into Isaac's leg. Its teeth found flesh instinctively, automatically. It bit down and held on until the current tore it away. Isaac's scream was primal, animal, a sound of pure agony that made several guests cover their ears. Blood bloomed in the water, mixing with the white foam of the churning pool. "Make it stop!" Isaac's voice was barely recognizable now, high and thin with terror. "Celeste, please! Make it stop!" She stood watching him, and her mind filled with memories she'd been pushing down for 6 months. Her first day working at the Warren estate. Isaac gives her the tour, showing off his wealth and possessions, then stopping in front of her and saying, "You're black, obviously. That's fine. I'm very progressive, but some of my guests aren't as enlightened as I am, so try to stay out of sight during parties, would you? You understand?" It hadn't been a question. The time he'd jokingly asked if she needed to check with her parole officer before working late. She'd never been arrested before the fake trespassing charge. The morning he'd spilled coffee on purpose and made her clean it up on her hands and knees, while his business associates watched and snickered. The other maids who'd worked here before. Sarah Chen's cousin, who'd left after 2 months and wouldn't talk about why. The older woman who'd quit suddenly and whose family filed a missing person report that went nowhere. The young man who'd tried to report safety violations and ended up deported on immigration charges that everyone knew were fabricated. The pattern of cruelty that went back years, decades maybe. People hurt, people silenced, people disappeared. All because Isaac Warren could do whatever he wanted to whoever he wanted, and no one would stop him. The ocean is dying because of his greed. The reef she'd loved was poisoned by his waste. The protected species became extinct or endangered because proper disposal cost too much, and Isaac's profit margins were more important than life itself. Another piranha found Isaac in the water, then another. They weren't hunting him deliberately, but they were scared, disoriented, and when their bodies crashed into his, instinct took over. Bite, release, bite again. Isaac was screaming continuously now, a sound that barely seemed human anymore. "Turn it off!" For the love of God, turn it off! Celeste moved then, walking along the pool edge toward where the control panel was visible through a waterproof viewing window installed on the deck. An emergency backup station so the system could be monitored and controlled without entering the equipment room. She could see the bright red emergency stop button from here. One push, and the current would shut down. The water would calm. Isaac could be pulled out, treated for his injuries, and probably survive. The guests saw where she was going, and a murmur of relief rippled through the crowd. She was going to save him. Of course she was. She was the hero, the victim, the good person in this story. Celeste reached the control panel. Her hand hovered over the emergency stop button. Isaac saw it too. Hope blazed across his face even as another piranha nipped his shoulder. "Yes, yes, push it! Stop this!" "I'll confess," he screamed, the words tumbling out desperately. "Everything. The dumping, the bribes, the payoffs to officials, all of it. I'll turn over all my records. I'll testify against everyone involved. Just stop this." The guests gasped. Phones that had been lowering started recording again. Isaac's confession, spoken in pure terror, caught on dozens of devices. "I destroyed the reef," Isaac continued, not realizing or not caring what he was saying anymore. "I knew what the chemicals would do. I knew it was protected. I just didn't care. It was cheaper. It was always about the money." His voice broke. "I've hurt people, made them disappear. I own judges, police, and politicians. I can give you all their names. Every corrupt official I've ever paid. Just save me, please." Celeste's finger was on the button now. One push. That's all it would take. She looked at Isaac, at the man who'd tried to kill her, who'd killed the ocean, who'd hurt countless people and never faced consequences. The man who was now begging for mercy he'd never shown anyone else. The man whose confession had just been recorded by 200 phones and would be uploaded to the internet within minutes. Around her, the guests were holding their breath. Some were praying, some were crying. All of them were watching her, waiting to see what she would do. Would she be the monster Isaac had tried to make her? Or would she be better than him? Celeste's finger pressed down on the emergency stop button, and nothing happened. She pressed it again. Still nothing. The control panel display flickered, showing an error message. Override active. Manual reset required at main control panel. The button out here was just for monitoring. The actual controls were still inside the equipment room, where she'd activated the system. There was no way to stop it from here. Isaac saw the confusion on her face, saw her pressing the button repeatedly, and understood. "No, no, no, no. Get to the equipment room. You have to shut it down manually." Celeste looked at the equipment room door, 50 feet away, looked at Isaac, being pulled inexorably toward the center of the whirlpool, looked at her own injured body, at the blood still flowing from her wounds, at the exhaustion making her hands shake. She could make it to the equipment room. She probably could. But it would take time. 30 seconds, at least. Maybe a minute. Isaac didn't have a minute. She looked at him, at the choice before her, at the line between justice and revenge, and she made her decision. Celeste ran. Her injured legs carried her across the pool deck, past the stunned guests, toward the equipment room door that still stood open. Every step sent pain shooting through her body, but she pushed through it, pushed past the exhaustion, pushed past everything except the need to reach those controls. 30 seconds. She had 30 seconds, maybe less. She burst through the equipment room door and slammed her hand against the main control panel. The touchscreen was still displaying the whirlpool status, the water flow graphics showing the violent current patterns. Her bloody finger found the emergency shutdown override. She pressed it. For a horrible moment, nothing happened. Then the system began powering down, the hum of the pumps decreasing, the electronic voice announcing, "Emergency shutdown initiated. Current reversal terminates." Outside, the water began to calm. The violent spinning slowed, the whirlpool flattening, the churning surface gradually becoming smooth again. Celeste collapsed against the wall, her legs finally giving out. Through the window, she could see security guards rushing to the pool edge, extending poles and ropes toward Isaac's floating body. They pulled him out onto the deck. He wasn't moving. For a moment, the entire party held its breath. Then Isaac coughed, water spewing from his mouth. He rolled onto his side, gasping, alive. The guests erupted in a mixture of relief and continued horror. Isaac was covered in bites, his white suit shredded and stained red. His leg had a deep gash where one piranha had gotten a good grip. His shoulder was bleeding. His hands were torn, but he was breathing. He was alive. Paramedics appeared seemingly out of nowhere, pushing through the crowd with a stretcher and medical equipment. Someone must have called 911 during the chaos. Behind them came police officers, their uniforms dark blue, their faces stern as they took in the scene. A pool full of piranhas and blood. A billionaire lying injured on the deck. 200 witnesses with phones out. And a black woman in a torn uniform, bleeding from multiple wounds, standing in the doorway of the equipment room. One of the officers approached Celeste cautiously. "Ma'am, I need you to step away from the controls and come with me." Celeste nodded, too exhausted to speak. She let the officer guide her to a chair near the rose garden, away from the pool, away from Isaac, away from the nightmare that had just unfolded. The paramedics worked on Isaac, stabilizing him, bandaging his wounds, loading him onto the stretcher. As they carried him past Celeste, his eyes found hers. They were filled with something she'd never seen in them before. Fear. Pure, genuine fear. Not of the piranhas, not of the water. Fear of her, of what she'd done, of what she represented. The realization that he wasn't untouchable after all. More police arrived, detectives, crime scene investigators. They started taking statements, photographing the pool and interviewing guests. The party that had been a celebration of wealth and excess an hour ago was now a crime scene. And through it all, the phones kept recording, uploading, sharing. The first video hit Twitter at 8:47 p.m., posted by a tech entrepreneur who'd been standing near the pool when Isaac pushed Celeste in. "You won't believe what just happened at Isaac Warren's party," the caption read, followed by 3 shocked face emojis. The video showed everything. Isaac grabbing Celeste, his speech about knowing your place, the push, Celeste hitting the water, the piranhas circling, Isaac's laughter, his guests filmed and placed bets. It had 10,000 views in 5 minutes, 100,000 in 20 minutes, 1 million by the time the ambulance was pulling away from the Warren estate with Isaac inside. Someone else posted a longer video starting from the wine spill and showing Isaac's escalating cruelty. The way he'd kicked Celeste's hand, the objects he'd thrown into the pool, his complete lack of remorse as he tried to kill her in front of everyone. Another video captured Celeste pulling herself from the water, running to the equipment room the moment Isaac fell into his own pool. And crucially, someone had captured Isaac's confession. His screaming admission about the illegal dumping, the bribes, the corruption, the people he'd hurt. Every word, crystal clear, recorded on multiple devices from multiple angles. By 9:15 p.m., @Piranha Pool was trending on Twitter. By 9:30, it was trending worldwide. The videos spread across every platform: TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Reddit, YouTube. Millions of people watching, sharing, commenting, expressing their horror and their rage and their strange, savage satisfaction at watching a billionaire face consequences for once. News outlets picked it up within the hour. Local stations first, breaking into their regular programming with breaking news. Billionaire Isaac Warren hospitalized after pool incident. Then the national networks got hold of the videos. CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, they all ran the same story, though with different spins. Billionaire's deadly pool party, Maid fights for survival. Isaac Warren, real estate mogul, allegedly attempts murder at party. Shocking video shows wealthy elite watching as black woman pushed into piranha pool. By midnight, the story was international. BBC, Al Jazeera, news outlets across Europe, Asia, South America. The whole world was watching Celeste Moore's fight for survival and Isaac Warren's public confession. At the police station, Celeste sat in an interview room with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders and bandages covering her wounds. The paramedics had treated her at the scene before the police had asked her to come in for questioning. "Not under arrest," the detective had emphasized. "We just need your statement." Detective Lisa Ramos sat across from Celeste now, a laptop open in front of her, showing one of the videos from the party. She'd watched it 3 times already, her expression growing darker with each viewing. "Ms. Moore," she said finally, closing the laptop, "I need to ask you some questions about what happened tonight. But first, I need to tell you that you have the right to have an attorney present during this interview. Do you want one? Am I being charged with something?" Celeste's voice was hoarse from screaming, from swallowing pool water, from exhaustion. "No," Detective Ramos said firmly. "Based on these videos, this is clear self-defense. Isaac Warren pushed you into a pool full of piranhas with the intent to kill you. Multiple witnesses confirm he prevented you from escaping and actively tried to agitate the fish to attack you. What happened after that was you defending your life." She paused. "But I need your statement on record. I need to know your side of the story, and I need to know about these allegations Mr. Warren made it while he was in the pool. Environmental crimes, the corruption, the bribes." Celeste took a shaky breath. "I have evidence, documents, emails, disposal records. I sent them to 3 environmental organizations 2 weeks ago. I was waiting for them to coordinate a public release, but..." She gestured vaguely at the situation they were in. "I think the public release just happened," Detective Ramos said dryly. "Those organizations have been calling the station non-stop for the last hour. They're ready to turn over everything you sent them. They're demanding a full investigation into Warren Industries." She leaned forward. "Ms. Moore, I've been a detective for 15 years. I've seen a lot of rich people get away with a lot of terrible things, but not this time. The videos from tonight, combined with the evidence you gathered, combined with Warren's own confession on camera, we're building a case that his lawyers won't be able to make disappear." Celeste felt tears welling up in her eyes for the first time all night. "He tried to kill me. He was going to let me die and call it an accident." "I know," Detective Ramos said gently. "And 200 people watched him do it. It's all on video. There's no way to spin this. No way to hide it. The whole world saw what he is." Through the window of the interview room, Celeste could see other detectives working, phones ringing off the hook, people rushing back and forth with files and laptops. The station was in chaos, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what had happened. Detective Ramos spent the next 2 hours taking Celeste's statement. Every detail, from the moment she'd taken the job at the Warren estate to the moment Isaac had fallen into the pool. Celeste told her everything. The illegal dumping, the evidence she'd gathered, the arrest on fake charges, Isaac's threat the day before the party. When they finally finished, it was past midnight. Detective Ramos closed her notebook and looked at Celeste with something that might have been admiration. "You're free to go, Ms. Moore. We'll need you to come back for follow-up interviews, but for tonight, you're done. Is there someone who can pick you up? Family? Friends? Celeste shook her head. I'll call a cab. Let me give you a ride home, Detective Ramos offered. It's the least I can do. As they walked through the police station toward the exit, Celeste saw the TV mounted in the lobby. It was tuned to a 24-hour news channel, and her own face filled the screen. A photo someone had taken of her standing at the pool edge, soaking wet, covered in blood, defiant. The headline beneath read, "Who is Celeste Moore, the woman who survived Isaac Warren's death trap?" Detective Ramos noticed her staring. You're famous now. The videos have been viewed over 50 million times. You're all anyone's talking about. They stepped outside into the night air. News vans were parked across the street from the police station. Reporters noticed them and started shouting questions, cameras swinging in their direction. Ms. Moore, how do you feel about what happened tonight? Are you going to press charges against Isaac Warren? What do you want to say to the people watching this? Detective Ramos held up a hand, shielding Celeste as they walked to her car. No comment. Ms. Moore is not making any statements at this time. They got in the car and pulled away from the chaos. Celeste leaned her head against the window, watching the city lights blur past. Somewhere out there, Isaac Warren was in a hospital bed, under police guard, his empire crumbling around him. Somewhere out there, millions of people were watching videos of her fight for survival, sharing them, discussing them, making her into a symbol of something larger than herself. But right now, all she felt was tired. Miss Moore? Detective Ramos said as they pulled up to Celeste's apartment building, modest and small compared to the estates she'd been working in. Yes? The detective turned to look at her, her expression serious but warm. You're free to go. And ma'am? She paused. You're a hero. What did you do tonight? Surviving that? Exposing Warren's crimes? Standing up when no one else would? That takes courage most people don't have. You should be proud. Celeste got out of the car and stood on the sidewalk, watching the detective drive away. A hero. The word felt strange, ill-fitting. She didn't feel like a hero. She felt like someone who'd barely survived, who'd been pushed to the edge and had no choice but to fight back. But as she looked up at her apartment window, at the life she'd built for herself after losing everything, she thought about the reef that might be saved now that Isaac's crimes were exposed, about the other people who might be protected now that his corruption was public, about the system that kept people like him untouchable, finally cracking, just a little. Maybe that was what heroes were. Not people who felt brave, but people who fought anyway, even when they were terrified, even when the odds were impossible, even when the world told them they didn't matter. Celeste limped inside, her body aching, her mind exhausted. But for the first time in 6 months, maybe for the first time in years, she felt something she'd almost forgotten. Hope. 48 hours after the party, Isaac Warren's world was disintegrating. The federal agents arrived at Warren Industries headquarters at 6 a.m. on Monday morning, 24 of them with badges and boxes and search warrants. They swept through the building like a tide, seizing computers, files, hard drives, everything. Employees arriving for work were turned away at the door, told to go home, that the office was closed indefinitely. The warrant was based on Isaac's confession, the one he'd screamed while begging for his life, the one that had been recorded on 47 different phones and viewed by over 100 million people worldwide. Probable cause to believe Warren Industries has engaged in illegal dumping of hazardous materials, bribery of government officials, fraud and racketeering, the warrant read. By noon, federal investigators had found everything Celeste had found, and more. Disposal records going back 15 years. Payment ledgers showing bribes to inspectors, politicians, environmental officials. Emails discussing how to falsify safety reports. Internal memos calculating that legal fines were cheaper than proper waste disposal. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable, and completely damning. The board of directors held an emergency meeting at 2 p.m. Isaac wasn't invited. He was still in the hospital, under police guard, recovering from his injuries, but his absence didn't matter. The vote was unanimous. Effective immediately, Isaac Warren is removed from all positions within Warren Industries and its subsidiary companies. His ownership stake will be placed in trust pending the outcome of criminal and civil proceedings. The press release went out at 3 p.m. By 3:30, Warren Industries stock had dropped 40%. By market close, it was down 62%, wiping out billions in value. Major clients started calling to cancel contracts. The Riverside Hotel development, a $300 million project, canceled. The waterfront condos in the Harbor District, canceled. The resort in the Keys, canceled. We cannot be associated with Warren Industries at this time, the statements all read, variations on the same theme. We are shocked and dismayed by the allegations and are committed to conducting business with ethical partners. Translation: Isaac Warren was toxic now, a liability. Being connected to him could destroy their own brands, their own businesses, so they cut ties, abandoned the ship, and left him to drown, just like he'd tried to do to Celeste. At 5 p.m., a process server arrived at the hospital. Isaac was sitting up in bed, watching the news coverage of his empire's collapse, when the papers were handed to him. Divorce papers. His wife, Victoria, was filing. She wanted full custody of their 2 children, ages 8 and 11. She wanted the house in the Hamptons, the penthouse in the city, half of everything that wasn't seized by the government. Due to irreconcilable differences and the defendant's criminal behavior, the filing stated, Victoria had released a statement to the press. I am horrified by my husband's actions. I had no knowledge of his criminal activities or his attempt to murder Ms. Moore. My priority now is protecting my children from the consequences of their father's choices. Isaac crumpled the papers in his fist, his injured hands making the gesture painful. Everyone was abandoning him. Everyone who'd laughed at his jokes, who'd attended his parties, who'd benefited from his wealth and connections. Gone. All of them. The media circus around Celeste was relentless. Reporters camped outside her apartment building. News vans lined the street. Every major outlet wanted an interview. Morning shows, evening news, cable networks, podcasts, documentary filmmakers. Her phone rang constantly with calls from producers, agents, and publicists. Book deals were being offered, movie rights, speaking engagements at universities, conferences, environmental summits. Your story is inspiring millions, one agent told her. You're a symbol of resistance, of fighting back against corrupt power. People want to hear from you. For 2 days, Celeste ignored them all. She stayed in her apartment, recovering from her injuries, watching the news coverage with a mixture of disbelief and grim satisfaction. The world was finally seeing Isaac Warren for what he really was. The reef might be saved. Other victims were coming forward, emboldened by her example. But she knew her silence couldn't last forever. The story was too big. And if she didn't tell it herself, others would tell it for her, and they'd get it wrong. So on Tuesday evening, she agreed to one interview. 60 minutes, national audience, serious journalism, a chance to tell the truth on her own terms. Leslie Stahl sat across from Celeste in a hotel suite that the network had rented for the interview. Celeste wore a simple blue dress, her bandages visible on her arms, her hands still wrapped in gauze. "Celeste Moore," Leslie began. "2 nights ago, you survived something that seems almost impossible. Can you walk us through what happened?" Celeste took a breath and told her story. Not just the party, but everything before it. Her scholarship to study marine biology, losing her mother, dropping out of school, watching the reef die from Isaac's pollution. "I didn't take that job as a maid because I needed the money," Celeste explained. "I mean, I did need the money, but that's not why I took it. I took it because I needed access to his files. I needed proof of what he was doing to the ocean." She showed Leslie copies of the documents she'd gathered, dumping schedules, chemical analyses showing toxins in the water near protected reefs, emails where Isaac and his executives discussed how to avoid environmental regulations. The sanctuary reef was home to endangered sea turtles, rare coral species, fish that exist nowhere else on Earth, Celeste said, her voice thick with emotion. "Isaac Warren killed them. Thousands of them, maybe tens of thousands. He poisoned an entire ecosystem to save money on proper waste disposal." Leslie leaned forward. "And when he found out you discovered his crimes, he tried to kill you." "Yes. In front of 200 witnesses. He thought he could get away with it," Celeste said. "He'd gotten away with everything else. Why not murder?" The interview aired that night and was watched by 23 million people. By morning, it had been viewed online another 50 million times. The environmental organizations that Celeste had contacted began releasing their findings. Detailed reports on the contamination, satellite images showing the reef's decline. Water samples proving the toxins came from Warren Industries. "This is one of the worst environmental disasters in the region's history," a marine biologist told CNN. "The damage is extensive. Some species may never recover, and it was all preventable. Isaac Warren chose profit over the planet." By Wednesday, criminal charges were filed, not just against Isaac, but against 3 of his executives who'd been involved in the dumping operation. Attempted murder, environmental crimes under the Clean Water Act, bribery, fraud, racketeering. The indictment was 37 pages long. If convicted on all counts, Isaac faced up to 40 years in prison. The job offers started coming in immediately after the 60 Minutes interview. The Ocean Conservancy wanted to hire Celeste as a special investigator. The National Marine Sanctuary Foundation offered her a position as an advocate and spokesperson. 3 universities reached out about research positions, fellowships, opportunities to finally finish her degree and pursue the career she'd once dreamed of. "You have a platform now," one conservation director told her. "A voice that millions of people will listen to. We can use that voice to make real change, to protect other reefs, other ecosystems, and to hold other polluters accountable." Publishers were offering 6-figure advances for her book. Speaking bureaus wanted to book her for corporate events, environmental conferences, and college campuses. A documentary crew wanted to follow her for a year, filming her journey from maid to activist. It was overwhelming, surreal. A week ago, she'd been scrubbing toilets and serving drinks. Now she was being called a hero, an inspiration, a voice for the voiceless. Isaac was released from the hospital on Wednesday afternoon, transferred to house arrest while awaiting trial. His ankle monitor beeped as he walked through the door of his penthouse, the home he might lose to his wife, to the government, to the victims who were already filing civil suits. The place felt empty, despite being filled with expensive furniture and art. Victoria had taken the kids to her mother's house. The staff had quit. He was alone, except for the federal agent stationed outside his door. He turned on the television and watched his world collapse in real time. Warren Industries stock continues to plummet. Federal investigators have uncovered evidence of a criminal enterprise spanning decades. Environmental groups are calling for the maximum sentence. Celeste Moore's interview has sparked a national conversation about accountability for the wealthy elite. His phone rang. His lawyer, probably. Or another board member resigning. Or another client pulling out. He almost didn't answer. But something made him look at the screen. Unknown number. He answered. "Hello?" "Isaac." Celeste's voice, calm and clear. His hand tightened on the phone. "How did you get this number?" "Does it matter?" She paused. "I saw the news. Your company. Your wife. Everything." Isaac's throat was tight. "You got what you wanted. You destroyed me. Are you calling to gloat?" "No," Celeste said. "I'm calling because I want you to understand something. I didn't destroy you, Isaac. You destroyed yourself. Every choice you made, every crime you committed, every person you hurt. Those were your decisions. I just made sure the world found out about them." "I'm going to prison," Isaac said, his voice breaking. 40 years, they're saying. I'll die there." "Good." The word was simple, final, devastating. "The reef is dying because of you," Celeste continued. "Species are going extinct because of you. People have suffered because of you. You tried to kill me because I threatened to expose the truth. And now you want sympathy. Now you want me to feel sorry for you." Isaac said nothing. What could he say? "I survived your pool, Isaac. I survived your piranhas. I survived you. And now I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure what you did to that reef never happens again. Making sure other people like you face consequences. Making sure your name becomes a warning instead of a brand." "Celeste, please." "No," she interrupted. "You had your chance to beg. You had your chance when you were in that pool, when you confessed everything, when you promised you'd make it right. But we both know that was just survival instinct. If I'd saved you that night, and there'd been no cameras, no witnesses, you would have had me arrested. Or worse." Isaac closed his eyes. She was right. Of course she was right. "Goodbye, Isaac," Celeste said. "I hope prison teaches you something you should have learned a long time ago. That actions have consequences, even for people like you." "You think this is over?" Isaac's words slurred slightly, painkillers for the bites that still wept under bandages. "I still have friends, judges. One call and your little foundation disappears. Your face on every screen, I'll make it a mugshot." Silence. Then, 20 seconds. "Fine. Money. Name your price. 10 million. 20. Enough to buy your own reef, plant coral with your bare hands. You walk away, I walk away. We both win." Another beat. 10 seconds. Isaac's voice cracked. "Please, I'm begging. I can't do it for 15 years. I'm 50. I'll die in there." "Celeste, this isn't about revenge." Her tone never rose, never wavered. "This is about justice. For the ocean you poisoned, for every maid you humiliated, every rival you buried, every community drinking your runoff. For everyone who couldn't fight back." The line went dead. Isaac stared at the phone, then hurled it across the room. It shattered against a sculpture that had once been valued at $300,000. The ankle monitor beeped faster, sensing elevated heart rate. He sank to the floor, forehead against cold marble, and stayed there until the federal agent outside knocked once, routine check-in, and moved on. Court proceedings began on a Monday that smelled of rain and camera flashes. The federal courthouse steps were a gauntlet. Reporters shouted questions in 3 languages. Celeste walked through them in a navy suit, scars visible at her collar, expression unreadable. Inside, the air was thick with flashbulbs and the rustle of legal pads. Prosecutors laid out the case like a dissection. 15 years of illegal dumping mapped on satellite imagery. Chemical trails glowing neon across projected ocean currents. Celeste took the stand on day 4. She wore the same calm she'd used in the pool, still, deliberate, lethal in its precision. Red-bellied piranhas don't frenzy without provocation, she said, clicking to a slide of the Warren pool. Erratic movement, blood, panic, these trigger-feeding. Mr. Warren threw objects, kicked my hand, and created exactly those conditions. The pool was his weapon, just like the waste pipes were his weapon against the reef. The jury leaned forward. One woman, a teacher from the coastal town where fish had washed up belly-white for years, wiped tears. Victim impact statements followed. A former groundskeeper who'd been fired for reporting safety violations, now living in his sister's basement. A fisherman whose nets came up empty. His children anemic from tainted water. A rival developer who'd woken to find his permits revoked overnight. His company gutted by anonymous audits everyone knew traced back to Warren's payroll. The Piranha pool became shorthand. Pundits called it the billionaire's aquarium of accountability. Memes flooded timelines. Isaac's face photoshopped onto a thrashing fish, captioned, "When your own trap bites back." On the final day, the judge, a woman whose own brother had died of cancer linked to industrial runoff, delivered the sentence without flourish. Isaac Warren, you are hereby sentenced to 15 years in federal prison on counts of attempted murder, environmental terrorism, bribery, and racketeering. Assets seized will fund restitution to affected communities and full remediation of the sanctuary reef. The court is adjourned. The gavel fell like a depth charge. Outside, the sky had cleared. Celeste stood on the courthouse steps as cameras rolled. She didn't smile for them. "Today isn't a victory," she said. "It's the beginning. The ocean doesn't forgive, but it can heal, if we stop the bleeding." That night, she filed incorporation papers for the Ocean Justice Initiative. Seed money came from seized Warren accounts, matched by crowdfunding that crashed servers twice. The mission statement was one line: no ecosystem left behind, no voice too small to matter. Within weeks, university partnerships followed. Scholarships named after Sarah Chen, internships for kids from polluted zip codes. A mobile lab that sailed to contaminated coastlines, testing water, training locals, filing lawsuits before the poison spread. 6 months later, Celeste sat in a lecture hall that smelled of salt and old wood. The same university that had mailed her withdrawal letter years ago now had her name on a plaque outside the marine lab. She wore jeans and a faded Ocean Justice hoodie, notebook open to a fresh page. Professor Chen, Sarah's cousin, the one who'd lectured on piranha myths, stood at the podium. "Ms. Moore, your thesis proposal on restorative current modeling in damaged reefs. The committee's ready when you are." Celeste stood. Her scars caught the projector light like silver tributaries. She clicked to her first slide, a satellite image of the sanctuary reef, green shoots of new coral visible where cleanup crews had finally begun their work. "Let's begin," she said. The room hushed. Outside, the ocean waited, wounded, resilient, remembering everything. 1 year after the splash that shattered an empire, the university amphitheater brimmed with salt-kissed air and anticipation. Graduation banners snapped in the breeze off the bay, and every seat held someone who knew Celeste Moore's name before they knew her face. Reporters lined the back rows, lenses trained on the stage where she waited in black regalia, the master's hood heavy on her shoulders like earned armor. When her name echoed across the speakers, The crowd rose as one. Not polite applause. Thunder. Students in ocean justice t-shirts. Fishermen whose waters ran clean again. A former Warren Maid clutching a scholarship letter. Professor Chen placed the diploma in Celeste's scarred hands and whispered, "Sarah would be proud." Celeste's eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. She'd spent those tears in a pool of teeth. On the podium, she adjusted the microphone with the same steady calm she'd used to outthink piranhas. "Survival isn't a single moment," she said, voice carrying to the cheap seats and the live stream beyond. "It's choosing, every day, to keep swimming when the current wants you under. It's speaking when silence is safer. It's refusing to let someone else's cruelty define the ecosystem of your life." The applause rolled like waves. Her foundation had teeth now. 3 major contamination sites, once Warren's secret dump grounds, were capped, filtered, reborn. Satellite images showed coral recruits where sludge had ruled. Seagrasses swayed in currents scrubbed of trichloroethylene. Local kids learned to test pH with kits bearing the Ocean Justice logo. Their data uploaded to a public dashboard no corporation could bury. Celeste's speeches filled auditoriums from Lagos to Los Angeles. She spoke of systemic predation, how power imbalances create feeding frenzies in boardrooms and legislatures, how the powerless learn to go still, to wait, to strike with knowledge instead of claws. Audiences left quieter, angrier, and ready. In a federal penitentiary 3 states away, Isaac Warren measured time in fluorescent hum and the squeak of guard shoes. His cell was 8 by 10, the cot narrower than the pool coping he'd once crushed Celeste's fingers against. The scars on his neck itched under the jumpsuit collar. At night he traced them, remembering the whirlpool's roar, the moment he understood he wasn't the apex anything. He wrote the letter on prison stationery, pen shaking. "Celeste, I see your face on the news. I see the turtles in what used to be my pool. I see everything I lost. I was wrong. I am sorry. If you ever—" He never finished. The envelope went into the outgoing mail unmarked, unanswered. It joined a stack of similar letters in a foundation file labeled Accountability Correspondence. Do not engage. The Warren estate had changed hands twice, first to federal auction, then to the Coastal Conservation Trust. The mansion's wings were leased to researchers. The grounds hosted school groups learning tide pool ecology. The pool, drained, cracked, refilled, now sheltered rescued sea turtles in a lagoon of filtered seawater. A plaque at the edge read, "In memory of those who fought to surface, donated by the people Isaac Warren tried to silence." Celeste visited on a Tuesday when the tourists were gone. She walked the tile alone, barefoot, feeling phantom suction from a grate long sealed. The water was impossibly clear, sunlight dappling the shells of turtles missing flippers or bearing propeller scars. One drifted beneath her shadow, ancient eyes meeting hers without fear. She crouched, trailing fingers through the surface. No piranhas, no champagne laughter, just the soft bump of a turtle nose against her palm, a quiet benediction. Her story had cracked something open. Tips flooded hotlines. Maids with NDAs, interns with assault claims, coastal towns with buried spill reports. Prosecutors built cases the way Celeste once mapped currents, one data point at a time, undeniable in aggregate. 3 more billionaires faced indictments before winter. Hashtags became court dockets. The research vessel Resurface cut through dawn glass off the Bahamas. Celeste rolled backward off the dive platform, fins slicing silence. 20 meters down, the reef was a cathedral of color. Parrotfish clouds, brain coral domes, a nurse shark gliding like a gray ghost. She adjusted her buoyancy, neutral, weightless, logging data on a slate that glowed soft blue. The shark circled once, curious, then vanished into blue. Celeste watched it go and felt the old fear flicker, then extinguish. She was no longer prey. She was the current now, carrying sediment away, making room for new growth. Sometimes the depths we're thrown into become the place we find our strength. Sometimes survival isn't enough. We have to rise, transform, and make sure no one else drowns in silence. Celeste didn't just survive Isaac Warren's cruelty. She used it to change the world. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this incredible journey. If this story touched your heart, wait until you see what's coming next. It's even more powerful and inspiring than you can imagine. So don't go anywhere. Click on that video showing on your screen right now to dive into another amazing story that will absolutely blow your mind. Trust me, you won't regret it.